At the San Jose Convention Center, where Apple Computer is hosting its Worldwide Developers Conference. We're here to profile Dave Nagel, who heads up the entire software side of Apple's business. As general manager of the AppleSoft division of Apple Computer, this is an important event for Dave Nagel. Software developers from all over the world have converged to learn about the new PowerPC Macs and Apple's plans for the next generation operating systems. Like many computer industry leaders, Dave Nagel's road to the top has been unusual.
I think a lot of us in the software industry get here by strange routes, and mine is probably no exception. I was trained really as a scientist and spent probably 10 years as a customer of computer companies doing science with a computer. I was particularly interested in a pretty esoteric field of developing mathematical models that describe how people see and how they hear and general perceptual capabilities. That led to an interest in human interface. Sort of the idea is to take knowledge of how people see, hear, remember, think, and convert that into design criteria for interfaces between machines and people. I worked at NASA for many years doing that, and at some point along the way I started buying Apple products, Macintosh computers, because I liked the idea that here was a company that based its whole existence on doing the human interface better than anyone else. And that led to a sort of a love affair with the technology and eventually led me to Apple.
The growth of the personal computer business and the convergence of communications technologies has altered the whole landscape for what the future of computing and the future of the information age might be like. What's your vision of the future of the information age?
I think at the end of the century we can probably say pretty safely what's going to happen. The computing technology itself has advanced so fast, driven by advances in microprocessor technology and general integrated circuit technology, that by the end of the decade, the end of the century, we will have computing capabilities that quite literally will fit into your pocket that represent the power of say, a $10 to $20 million supercomputer today. In fact, supercomputers themselves are becoming almost obsolete because all that power can now be put into small chips, pieces of silicon. And so the first major thing is we'll have just incredible computing power in terms of raw computational speed. The second major thing is that we're beginning to use it completely differently than we have ever used it. Computers were invented for calculation, to basically do arithmetic. That's what I always used computers for when I first started 20, 30 years ago. But what computers are used for now, increasingly, is to communicate, allow people to communicate with one another and give people access to information. And I think the most pervasive effect by the end of this century will be to have in place a near universal capability, which is really analogous to today's telephone system. This is what all the newspapers have termed the information superhighway. A lot has been written about it, obviously, but I think we will have in place by the end of this decade at least the beginnings of this universal digital communication network, which will give people incredible access to information, will allow them to communicate with one another in ways that they can't do today, with video, for example. And I think the biggest impact in the end will be that computers will be really converted into communication systems and become part of a global communication system.
Do you think that, I don't know what percentage of people use computers in their lives today, what would you say it is?
It depends. You know, it's in the United States it's about 1 out of 3.
All right. So do you think in this vision that you just outlined, do you think that that's going to significantly rise?
Absolutely. You know, if you look at the penetration of telephone systems, which is probably an appropriate analogy, something like 96% of all people in the U.S. have a telephone. It varies, obviously, you know, hugely depending on where you are in the world. I think that people will be using computers by the end of the decade. They won't think of themselves as using computers. They'll think of themselves as having a communication system, or they may even still call it a telephone. But it'll be based on digital technology, a new, not analog technology, and it'll be able to do a lot more. Like, for example, have your personal address book with you everywhere you go, integrated with the communicator, the telephone system in effect. And instead of just sound, you'll be able to communicate your picture if you're bold enough to do that, or, you know. So I think that people will be using computers in huge numbers. They won't always think of themselves using computers, and we'll invent new names for all those products.
Apple Computer's long-term strategy is summed up in just a few words: stand out and fit in. It means that Apple's goal is to make its future operating systems the best in the business and to build technology into their computers that lets Mac users work efficiently with DOS, Unix, and other operating systems. Stand out and fit in, it's easy to say, but it's a tough challenge to execute, and Dave Nagel has plenty of confidence.
We're committed to staying ahead and standing out in the area of human interface, and so System 7.5 is really the next volley in that, and I think you'll see really a revolution again in human interface technology is analogous to what we did in 1984 over the next couple of generations of operating systems. System 7.5 introduces for example, a new active assistance capability, which we call Apple Guide, which will literally walk you through a complicated computing protocol, setting up file sharing, setting up a network, sharing information with someone on a network, things that people today often need system administrators to help them, certainly to do the setup, and sometimes, depending on how often they do these things, sometimes even to do it after it's set up. That will all be built into the system. You turn it on, you ask it how to do something, and it literally will just walk you through it. In fact, even draw, we call them coach marks, but even draw visual indicators around the elements that the user should look at next or interact with next, and so on. So it's a major breakthrough really in ease of use. In fact, we ourselves are sort of transitioning our focus away from ease of use, which really focuses on the device, and a lot more toward what we call ease of doing. People want to do things with computers, not use computers. And so this is really this realization, I think, has really conditioned the whole strategy with respect to human interface. So Apple Guide is one major step. We're also introducing with System 7.5 a new graphics capability called QuickDraw GX, which has astonishing new capabilities, again, not only in graphics, but in typography and the ability to manipulate fonts, and in particular 2-byte fonts, the kind of fonts that are used in Japan or China or Korea, the so-called, what we call 2-byte countries. System 7.5, again, has very powerful tools built into the graphic system itself for manipulating those fonts. It's a very complicated business because in English, of course, everything reads from left to right, but in other languages, it reads from right to left or even top to bottom. So you have to have a font and a graphics and a typography capability that supports all those complexities. You take for granted, for example, things like being able to do an ordered list to sort something alphabetically. But think about sorting something over 6,000 Chinese characters. You have to have new and powerful capabilities that are very different than what we take for granted in English. System 7.5 has all those capabilities. And it also has a technology which is part of our open collaboration environment, a technology called PowerTalk, which really introduces this idea of building communications deeply into the operating system and integrating it with the computer itself. So with PowerTalk, it doesn't matter what kind of network you're connected with, it doesn't matter what kind of communication system you're connected with, whether it's an analog phone system or a PBX or whatever. All of that complexity of that is unified for the user. Very simple human interface. All of your mail, independent of what kind of mail system sends it to you, comes into one mailbox. You click on that, you get all your mail, including your voice messages, and so on. So it's a very powerful capability. I think really points the direction what we'll do in the future. Copeland and Gershwin just extend those things. And we will have, over that period of time, can't tell you exactly when, we haven't announced it, but we'll have yet another powerful new extension on graphics that introduce really three-dimensional graphics in the world of virtual reality. We'll be building that deeply into the computing system so the developers won't have to do that themselves. The human interface will continue to evolve. We also have Even in System 7.5, we have, because of work that we did really over the last 5 years on the foundational elements, have built in a powerful scripting capability, which gives the user the ability to automate tasks. So this system can, in effect, record what you do and can create a little script to do it for you. If you come into your office every morning and read your electronic mail, and you have to do all that manually, with this system, you could actually have the system itself download your mail every day at 7 o'clock and have it all ready for you. So you can save that time and just get right at the business of looking at the mail and responding to it. In the future, we may even have the system respond for you with even more intelligent kinds of scripting.
Portable computing with PDAs like the Newton and laptops like the PowerBook is one of the fastest growing dimensions of the computer industry. And Dave Nagel, whose division makes the software for these cutting-edge tools, thinks Apple has just scratched the surface of what will be a major market.
The people who are most interested in PDAs, which really are designed to make, computing and communications technology more accessible to people than, say, personal computers are. I mean, that's really the vision, is take all the sophisticated digital technology and make it available to a much wider group of people. What you find in practice is the people who are most interested, most understanding, and most accepting of these new technologies are precisely the people that today use personal computers. And I think what we're finding in our own sales and our own experience with Newton is that those are the people who are buying the products. You begin to see glimmers of realization of, gee, this is a revolutionary new product in the commercial marketplace a lot earlier than you do in the consumer marketplace. So we have people, for example, the U.S. military, the Department of Defense, is very interested in our products in Newton for medical applications. Equipped with wireless networks, doctors will have an electronic pad that they can call up patient records and do other things much more easily than they can do with today's technology. So those are actually the arenas in which I think all of the innovation in terms of usage of PDAs is taking place is really in the commercial sector, not in the consumer. So we've really refocused our whole product development cycle, our marketing campaigns, and everything else to really reflect that. And I think, if anything, we misjudged. We misjudged that. We thought that the consumer versions of these products and the consumer interest in them and understanding of them would be higher than it turns out to be. And retrospectively, probably shouldn't have been surprised. But I believe that the PDAs will evolve. The technologies will get much better. More interesting communication capabilities will be built in over the next couple of years, integrating telephony and paging, messaging, and even wireless networking, which we're, of course, working on and have been for a number of years. So I think the greatest excitement around these devices in the short term, in the next couple of years, is going to be around the communication capabilities that they provide.
In between the personal computing business and the PDA business, somewhere in there falls the laptop business. What developments do you think we're going to see in the evolution of laptop computers over the course of the next few years?
Some of the trends are pretty clear. People want longer battery life, they want lighter weight, and of course they want more functions. And so all those things are going to happen. The systems that we just brought out, we just announced a 500 series new set of PowerBooks, for example, have batteries that have microprocessors in them. We call them smart batteries, and they're designed to save battery power and make really much longer practical battery life. And so I think that's going to continue. Battery technology is continuing to evolve, and so you'll get to the point at which instead of a couple of hours or even less than that in some cases, when these systems were first developed a couple of years ago, you'll have systems that are practically will last all day long and recharge quickly and so on. So that's sort of one whole set of the whole power management thing is evolving. They are getting lighter, and I think for me the breakthrough for me was when I could shove one in my briefcase without having to have a separate case for it and put it the same way I did my notebooks and so on and carry it out on the road. So I think you'll continue to see breakthroughs in weight, although maybe once they get down to a couple of pounds, it'll be hard to reduce that further. But again, the biggest breakthrough, I believe, and really the thing that we designed our notebooks from the beginning really looking forward to was, again, integration of communications. And so all of our new systems come with modems built in. They all come with high-performance networking built in. And in fact, what I use PowerBook when I travel is to stay in contact with all the people I work with back in Cupertino or wherever I happen to be working. So for me, it's become a communication device as well as a portable office. And similar to what we said about PDAs, I think you'll see more and more communication capabilities built into these laptops. And in many ways, these same technology trends that are driving the PDA market is really driving the laptop or notebook, really probably more appropriate. I think none of us use these things in our laps anymore. But communications, I think, will really characterize, as well as innovative industrial designs and so on, will really characterize the growth of this market over the next couple of years.
Apple is one of the companies that's primarily responsible for the development and nurturing of the multimedia business. Multimedia is about to become a big business. What's your take on the growth of multimedia over the next few years and its impact on the world of education?
I think you're right. Apple really did. When we brought out our first QuickTime software technology 3 years ago, we made multimedia possible. And we also have, over the last year or two, been very aggressive in promoting the CD-ROM storage technology, because without CD-ROM and storage technologies that allow, hundreds of megabytes of information to put in a condensed space, multimedia is impractical, because video and sound and high fidelity graphics, of course, require huge amounts of storage. They really represent a lot of information. So we started out with software and with storage technology, and I think we have driven the industry. It's not surprising, of course, that others are now coming along. That's what happens. Time to market advantage is a great advantage, and we find that most of the best multimedia titles, whether they're for education or other things, are really available first on the Macintosh, and I suspect that'll continue to be the case for quite some time. Multimedia has lots of potential, has a great number of different potential impacts, I think, in the industry, but I think nowhere greater than in education. The process of education is about getting information into people, getting knowledge into people, and the best ways that we have found to do that are really information-rich technologies. When I was in school, we had what we called AV technologies, were film strips and slideshows and so on. But they're so limited because they're static and hard to manage, hard to manipulate, so on. Of course, all that can be done completely easily now, electronically and digitally, and we can have movies, we can have interactive media, and I think the most exciting applications that I have seen are using multimedia technologies are ones designed for small children. Kids love interacting with this stuff. It's totally focusing, compelling for them, and it's very exciting, and I must say I think it's a real evolution of society to watch children rather than sitting passively in front of a TV. Sorry to insult your medium here, but rather than sitting passively in front of a TV, absorbing stuff, to watch kids really interact with a kid simulation program written for kids. We have one in our laboratories called Kid Sim. Just watching these children, 3, 4, 5 years old, do this stuff, it's just really exciting. They learn quickly, they learn to set up problems, they learn to solve problems, and what we find in schools is that the kids learn, and this is, I think, paradoxical almost, given that we're talking about computers, the kids learn to work with one another better than they do without computers.
We're beginning to hear a lot in the industry about intelligent agents and how they might impact personal computing over the next few years. Tell us what an intelligent agent is and how will it help us?
I think what we want are systems which will do things similar to what I said earlier. Will know what you want to do when you come into your office every morning, and will have your workspace or your working environment set up for you. It will have all your electronic mail downloaded, it will have all of your electronic newspapers queued up in the right order, and so on. So that's a very preliminary first step But again, it reflects what you want to do and reflects your thinking rather than doing something sort of autonomous. I don't think we want our computers, information machines, to be autonomous yet. Not until we have a lot more trust in them, at least. The next step in all of that, I think, is to have systems that, for example, you want to purchase information or you want to purchase theater tickets. I think the next step will be to have systems which will go out and negotiate for you. You can give them parameters. I don't want to pay more than $20. Get me the cheapest price. But that kind of technology is certainly available today in terms of our theoretical understanding of how to do it, and I think we now have the technologies to do all that. So I think the key thing is that computers will start to take some of the burden, some of the things we have to do manually today. Personal computers have become wonderful tools for many of us, but we have to do all the work. Tomorrow, I think we're going to be able to delegate a lot of that work, pass it off to systems which will do our bidding for us, quite literally. And probably the first step, I have a good friend in the aerospace business. He's actually a professor at the University of Miami. That there was a decade ago a debate in the aerospace industry about how autonomous automation should be in aviation, for example. And Earl Wiener remarked that what we really want is automation which is dumb but dutiful, I think, initially. We want it to do what we want it to do, not to go off on its own directions and do whatever it wants. And I think that's a great insight. Now, it can be intelligent and dutiful too, and that's what, of course, we're building to for the future.